The Manzini Magistrate's Court in Eswatini has postponed the case of the two men implicated in the murder of rapper Kiernan AKA Forbes and his friend, renowned chef Tebello Tibs Motsoane, to next week, Tuesday. Now, the matter has been postponed pending the lodging of a formal extradition application. Siyabonga and Malusi Ndimande have been remanded in custody. Police say they found 4 cell phones in possession of the accused. SABC News reporter Nhlanhla Jele has more from Manzini.
Good afternoon to you and to our viewers at home. Court proceedings just ended here at the Manzini Magistrate's Court in Eswatini, where we saw 2 suspects linked to the AKA and Tebello murder appearing briefly, and we saw that the case has been postponed to next week, Tuesday. We do understand, as the state prosecutor alluded to the court or made a submission for the postponement, that the South African counterparts, the NDPP in this case, did not furnish them with the full comprehensive application to have these 2 suspects extradited back to South Africa. We also saw their attorney, their defense attorney, are not opposing that application because obviously he too has not seen what is contained in that application. Remember, we had said that they appeared in court sometime last week, Monday, for the same issue after they were arrested, and only a provisional application was made. They were also waiting for the full comprehensive application. We spoke to Siyabonga Ngwenya, who is the defense attorney on the side, just to ask him, because yesterday he had said he is hoping that he will receive the full application. However, he said to us that he had not received the application. We also saw that in court he was opposing the issue of having their cell phones, which were seized when the 2 suspects were arrested. He was opposing to have their cell phones detained, saying that to us that an application or an affidavit was not submitted to him that contains what they found on the suspects when they arrested him. So such things were some of the things that we saw in court. We also, as I mentioned before, we know that the 2 brothers are appearing back in this court next week, Tuesday. Hopefully by then the full application will be submitted to the state prosecutor, the NDPP of Eswatini, as Siyabonga had said, who is the state prosecutor, that South Africa does understand that this is an urgent matter, and hopefully they know, or they said that this matter will be, the application rather, will be sent as soon as possible so that both parties can go through it. The defense lawyer also mentioned to us that there are conditions that they need to look at, especially when going through the application that will be submitted by the South African NDPP, issues of safety, for example. But he does say that just because they have these conditions, it doesn't mean that they will agree to the process or they will oppose it, meaning that it will all depend on what is contained in that whole application. We also saw earlier on when the 2 suspects were in court, they were relaxing, they seemed relaxed and not worried about what is happening as the 2 lawyers submitted their case to the magistrate.
All right, now let's get analysis. We're now joined by Teams by senior lecturer in the Criminal and Procedural Law at the University of Pretoria, Dr. Llewelyn Curlewis. Thank you so much for your time on the show. So the NDPP in South Africa is yet to file an official extradition request. Only a provisional application was filed, as to my understanding from our reporter who is in Eswatini. You know, a meeting was also held yesterday between the Eswatini NDPP as well as the legal representatives of the 2 accused. Perhaps you can talk to us, Doc, in terms of just unpacking the extradition process for us and what we are likely then to see when the 2 return in court back on the 12th of March.
Thank you, Nati. Thank you for speaking to me. Yes, in short, what must happen is a formal application must be lodged with the Kingdom of Eswatini in order to facilitate the extradition process. Until such time as the Magistrate Court in Manzini receive that application, obviously the South African courts will not have jurisdiction because we must get them in South Africa in order to prosecute them for the alleged murder of AKA Forbes. So in order to do that, the same principle is applicable as we've seen, for example, in the matter where the Guptas in a foreign country, if we want to get them extradited to South Africa to stand trial. So it's a similar proceeding or procedure, but because there is principles of jurisdiction applicable, South African courts will not entertain a matter unless those 2 accused are legitimately and legally in our country. And the only way we can secure that is to ask the courts in Manzini to formally accept our extradition application, in which event the South African police services, with or without the assistance of the legal representatives of these two accused, will then formally take possession of these two accused and bring them to the South African court, where they will stand trial together with the other 5 co-accused currently in Durban, KZN.
So the understanding then is that South Africa should have then filed that formal application of extradition before the men attend, because they are attending on the 12th of March, which is next week. I mean, just looking at what happened in court today and just looking at the time frame, is that likely to happen?
I can safely assume that there's nothing prohibiting the South African government, and specifically the National Director of Public Prosecution, to secure the formal application on or before the 12th. It's another at least a week or more in future, so there's ample time to do so. It's not like Eswatini is on the other side of the world. So that being said, I think we can expeditiously expect the NDPP to facilitate such an extradition application. But before that is done, make no mistake, there are still a lot of water to move into the sea, so to speak. In other words, what we are saying here is premature and it's early days. First and foremost, the court must take cognizance of the contents of that application. And depending then on the stance of the legal representation before the court in Manzini, they will either object against it or they will obviously consent to such an extradition. On face value at this stage, it seems as if the two accused is not unwilling to attend proceedings in KZN eventually. So it's purely a procedural, let's call it then, process that must be followed at this stage. I cannot see that it will be denied unnecessarily. So it's a question of time before they will be in KZN and join their other co-accused. But from that moment going forward, I mean, there's still a lot of things that must happen. The investigation work must be completed. There are forensic matters outstanding, ballistic matters. Say, for example, the contents of the cell phones that came into evidence and dispute in the court in Manzini. Those are some of the things that must still be attended to. And then obviously only at that stage the proceedings in South Africa will kick off. There will be applications for contents of the docket, disclosure we call it. Then there will be applications for further particulars. So make no mistake, it's not going to be a matter of we see this matter going on trial within the next month or two. I foresee nothing before maybe the end of this year.
Absolutely, because some experts also suggesting that it could take up to a year. It's interesting that you mentioned the contents of that application being important, because today the defense lawyer who spoke also to my colleague made mention in court and raised some concerns. Firstly, in terms of how the affidavit was not filed before the items belonging to his clients were confiscated, including those cell phones that we talked about in our introduction. You also spoke about how the safety of his clients needs to be guaranteed ahead of that extradition. I would imagine that is something that he would like to see then in that application when it does come through. How important is this then for his client in terms of safety? I mean, what is it really talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. As far as I have determined, it seems to me that the accused are afraid to be merely handed over to the SABC.
Yeah.
They would rather see that their own lawyers are involved in the proceedings from the outset until the final handing over to the South African authorities. But that can be arranged in the application, and the court can make such ruling and order to go with the extradition. So there's nothing wrong with that request by the accused and their legal representation. However, once we get to the stage where we talk about forensics and the search and the seizure of the cell phones that took place, those are items of, those are exhibits, those are law of evidence related issues. And the normal requirements for admissibility must be complied with and adhered to before it will be allowed into evidence against the accused. I do not see that will be something that will be determined by the court in Manzini at this stage, but definitely it will definitely play a role ultimately when the trial commences in KZN. Because first and foremost, unless the state can secure the admissibility of the cell phones and the contents and whatever the state wants to prove with it, that might even be excluded if it was not obtained in a constitutional and legitimate manner, a lawful manner, so to speak. We call it the fruits of the forbidden tree, which means in simple terms that everybody, especially the state's hands, must be absolutely clean when they proceed to court and provide evidence before court against the accused involved.
I want us to talk then about how the two cases that are running parallel, for lack of a better phrase, will then merge, when the two are eventually extradited. So one would imagine on the day that that happens, they will be handed over to the investigating officer who might or might not have correctional services with him at the time, depending on what the law depicts. And then those cases will then start to run, as one in terms of the 7 accused appearing in one court together to face all of these charges that they are facing. How is that then likely to unfold?
Yes, absolutely. I think you are spot on. The matter in the KZN that is currently pending against the other 5 co-accused will be postponed until such a time as these 2 individuals in Kingdom of Eswatini can be joined as co-accused in the main trial, let's call it in the main trial before the KZN court. So that will take time in itself. Because of the current situation where there's a pending extradition to be considered, you must imagine that unless that process is finalized, the matter in KZN cannot proceed. I do not see that the court will easily entertain a hazardous situation where we have one case against the 5 continuing in one court, only later on another one against the 2 accused currently in Eswatini commencing before court. All of these accused will be joined together in one single case. So that will take time. And it's not uncommon for the state to ask for adjournments and postponements, more than one at a time, until such time as all the co-accused can be joined together in one case. So that is definitely on the table, and that in itself is going to take another month or 2 or 3 at least before all of these people are before court simultaneously. Then the issue relating to their South African legal representation will come about, because it's not to say that the same legal representatives that have assisted them in Eswatini is going to be the same people that will be eligible to represent them in South Africa. So that might also then create a further postponement of some sort until such time as both the defense and the accused indicate to the KZN court that they are ready to proceed on trial. I also foresee a possibility that the matter might be transferred from the magistrate court in KZN, where it's currently before court, to either the regional court or even the High Court in either Durban or Pietermaritzburg to attend to the ultimate trial once all these accused are before court and all the preliminary issues have been dealt with and finalized. So we are talking about the best part of the remainder of the year before all those things will be attended to. And I cannot see that this matter will be set down for formal trial until such time, sometime next year. Also, take into consideration that bail application or possible bail applications will also have to be finalized before the trial commences. As far as I have it, the current 5 before the KZN court are currently considering their options on bail, and that matter in itself will also be attended to before we can have finality on the issues.